Hi, I'm indie fantasy author Melinda Kucsera. Welcome back to another episode of Fantasy Lore and More. Today we have E.K. Wise, and she's here to talk about her book, The Keepers of the Rock, the Debilis Rising. Did I get it right that time?
The Debilis Rising, yep. Whether it's one Debili or multiple Debilis, it's like the word sheep. Debili, the S is silent.
Gotcha.
It's a Latin word for feeble.
That's pretty cool. So tell us more about these Keepers of the Rock. What is the Rock? What are they keeping? And what is your book about? This is your debut.
Yes, my debut. I've wanted to write this book for a very long time, so I'm very happy to talk about it. So it's an urban fantasy, so contemporary fantasy, and it takes place in the world that we're in right now, our everyday world that we're dealing with at present. And so for centuries, the Keepers of the Rock, which is the oldest secret society that's still wandering around that nobody knows exists, have guarded the planet from careless human beings and from ancient evil, which are the Debili. And they're gifted with abilities from the Earth's resources like rocks, minerals, and geological phenomena. And their goal is they sort of walk unseen amongst human beings, and their goal is to protect the Earth. Not humanity, but the Earth itself. But then there's the Debili, who I'll talk about as well, who they thought they had vanquished these really, really awful, like primary Debili, but they haven't. And they seek to sort of take over human beings who they consider like cheap and take over the world's resources as well. And so it's up to the keepers to get the next generation, to bring them in and to help them figure out how they are going to keep the Earth safe from these evil people, and for dealing with trying to steward human beings towards understanding how to better protect the Earth. So that's sort of like the overarching concept of it.
Oh, wow. And this is YA urban fantasy.
Yes.
Not just urban fantasy, right? Yeah. So we've got some young people. How old are the protagonists?
They're all starting college. So the Keepers of the Rock, the society itself has a school, and the school is called the College of Geological Evolution. And so the keepers find the students don't find the school. So these are regular kids wandering around. They know they're different. They have abilities that are very unusual, and they're just very bright in being aware that this is not the kind of thing that you talk about to your parents or other people. And I talk about that very specifically. So the people with the abilities who become the keepers, they are bound by very, very specific moral code. And their job is to protect the Earth. They are to keep the Earth going, to make sure that we don't have these evil creatures that we call the Debili trying to take over and manipulate human beings at will, which they are more than happy to do and have for centuries. And they have to parse out the difference between evil human beings and evil Debili, because one of their moral codes is that they cannot get involved in human affairs. And this was a really important aspect of the book for me, because I have 4 young adults right now, and I took them to all the Marvel movies and Spider-Man and, DC comics, and enjoyed them as anybody else has. I mean, they're a lot of fun. But what always bothered me is the idea that, they're saving this wonderful young woman from this falling building, and they're going to save her, but yet there's horrible things happening over in this part of the world. And that's just kind of going on, and nobody's doing anything about that. So the way I developed this world is their goal is to protect the Earth. And they know that they cannot get involved in, taking down an evil war leader, as, they might be able to do, but they're not allowed to do that because it's not their place to do that. It's not their job to go in and manipulate other human beings and determine what their destinies are going to be. They just get to steward human beings in ways that I talk about, that I delve into. The evil Debili, however, have the same abilities as the keepers, yet they are not allowed. They go ahead and willfully manipulate as they want. They will use those for evil, like their abilities, and go in there and deal with human beings however they see fit. and have no moral code whatsoever. And so that's where the word Debili comes from. It means feeble, but the keepers take it one step further, and they call them decayed ones, because as these evil creatures with the same abilities continue to manipulate and dominate, it sort of strips parts of their soul away. And eventually they're just these physical and emotional husks of human beings. So you might see them wandering around, maybe looking like a homeless person who's just really in bad straits. That could be a Debili potentially. Just kind of hard to tell as you wander around. So anyway, so we have these, all the abilities, as I said, vary around geographical phenomenon. So we have, for instance, emogems. And an emogem is someone who's able to heal using rocks, minerals, and stones. So if you go into one of those healing, one of those rock stores where you find gems and minerals and crystals, and people for centuries, I say that pretty much in every mid-city, you can go and find a rock store. And frequently when I'm traveling around, I will go and see if I can find one. And invariably, you walk into one and they have lovely stones and what they feel the properties might be to make you feel better or help you think clear or whatever it might be. And I find it fascinating that people for thousands of years have attributed meaning to these. So I have these characters called the emogem who's actually have the ability to do that to a much more heightened degree than a human being. And then we have those who have a pharaoh ability, and that means that they're able to manipulate iron and phosphorus and a little bit of metals, and they use it primarily through heat manipulation. And then we have ingenios, and they can take a crystal, but as opposed to using it for healing, they really tap into the vibration capabilities of a crystal, because a crystal is piezoelectric. And it vibrates at the exact same frequency every single time. They tap into that, and they can actually use the scientific properties of that to kind of create lasers. And they're more like the engineers of the group. Then we have magros who work with rare earths. So they are very attuned to the rare earths in the world, their magnetic properties. They're able to compress them and amass them and do things with those. Resogems are very interesting. I have a character who's rapidly becoming a favorite amongst the readers that I've heard. Resogems actually tap into evil or negative energy that might be left inside a rock, a gem, or a mineral. So think of people who've collected semi-precious stones, valuable diamonds, things like that. And invariably, you hear stories like the Hope Diamond, which is sitting in the Smithsonian, Washington, D.C. And the Hope Diamond, I find it was so interesting that every person who owned that diamond had like really negative things happen to them. So that kind of, and you can look at that. You can look at the history of the story of that stone that sits in the Smithsonian. And so that kind of where I tapped into that idea there. So they're sort of the ones that look into the black market around the world, and they ferret out the evil Debili who are trying to manipulate people through that way. And then we have tectos who are very sensitive to the Earth's vibrations and are able to sort of create minor earthquakes, or more importantly, if they are a keeper, their goal is to help humanity figure out a better, quicker way to know when a earthquake is coming. And then the last group are volcos, who are similar with volcanoes. So they're able to manipulate lava and get a sense of what's happening around the world with the volcanoes. So from a keeper's perspective, what their job is to do is they cannot, as I said, directly get involved in human beings, but they steward. So they will quietly get inside scientific avenues within the government or industry or a university and sort of help them figure out, okay, what is the latest way? How can we steward you to figuring out a better way for volcanic detection or for earthquake detection? So we can help human beings figure out better ways to save them without doing it themselves, right? So they quietly, right. So, and then I have the keepers, and then the only other group I have are guardians. And these are human beings who are aware that keepers exist. They're very few and far between. They have dedicated their lives to the keepers, and they do what they can to make sure that it all stays very much quiet. And we get into the one really different thing about this novel that I wanted to do. And I want to say that Babel does the same thing. If you've read R.F. Kuang's Babel, there are footnotes. So I have footnotes in the book, but what's really unusual is some of them are actually clickable. So if you're reading the book by Kindle, you can click on the links directly. And if you're reading the actual book, you can just go into, whichever browser you want to and look them up. And when I bring up, let's say, emeralds or diamonds, rubies, things like that, you click on that in the book and it takes you to this wonder organization called mindat.org. And they very nicely partnered with me when I wrote this novel that allows you to go into this website and it will show you what these look like, these minerals or rocks look like in situ. So as opposed to, look at this fancy emerald that's all polished and beautiful and so forth. You see what it looks like in the earth, where it's actually what it looks like and all the properties and so forth. So I wanted, cool. I bring in some history and I bring in science in this book for fun, like really cool historic facts, really scientific facts, because I love learning. And I think I want to bring all of this world to life in such a way that we are all like learning cool things that we think are interesting. So if you dial deep down, it's sort of like if you remember being, 6, 7, or 8 years old, and did you have a dinosaur collection or the proverbial rock collection? And did you love sort of learning about the earth? And maybe your class did a little volcano eruption or you had to do that as a science project. And I want to tap into that excitement that we have about our lovely earth and how we protect it. So that's kind of we delving into the world. Yeah. And then however else you want me to discuss it, I'm happy to do that.
That's neat. I had a couple of questions before I move on to the next segment. You mentioned that these Debili, these decayed ones, they're poor people. I kind of find that problematic because that's
no.
That's
they're
like
not poor people.
Promoting harmful stereotypes and narratives and often people who are poor and in because you did mention and made a point of it earlier are in these situations not by any choice of their own. So I do want to. Yeah, I do. I would love you to clarify that.
100%. No. 100%. No, I'm just saying in terms of what a human being, because these monsters that are roaming the earth, a human being isn't aware that they exist. So if they see them wandering around, how might they be perceived in some way? And they are not impoverished people. A Debili definitely may not be. There's a lot of them wandering around that are perfectly capable of doing, making a ton of money and so forth. But no. It's just how might they be perceived? And I actually, as a clinical social worker, it's important to me because unfortunately what happens for us regular people, if we see somebody who's having a hard time. Sometimes we're very comfortable approaching them and helping them out and doing what we can to bring them in or let's, get people home, which we desperately need to do in this country. We have a real problem with that. Other people might be uncomfortable and they sort of just wander off because they're scared. As a clinical social worker, I actually worked with the chronic and mentally ill for several years. So that meant working with people with schizophrenia and other very serious mental health issues. And, oftentimes you'll see them potentially on the street where they're not taking their medication for whatever reason, or they haven't been able to get the proper health care to be able to do that. And so some people might be like, you know what, I'm going to approach that person and say, are you okay? Or can I give you something to eat? Or how can I help you? A lot of people are afraid because, these people, they're talking, they're hearing what they're hearing. This is just what they're dealing with. And having worked with this population for many years, when they are going through this, they absolutely believe that, what I'm going through is reality. What you're seeing is not reality. This is my reality. This is what's real. And so that's why it's sometimes hard to really work with someone who's going through this process, because you want to steer them towards a healthier sense of themselves, but they might be reluctant because they're not ready for that or they're afraid themselves. So if you think of wandering through the street and seeing somebody that's going through something like that. In my novel, it could be that people avoid people like that because they're afraid of what they're seeing. And could it be a Debili, or could it be somebody who's just going through a tough thing? It could be. And if it's one of these Debili, it's usually because other Debili have manipulated them to do things for them to the point that they've become so degraded because of the issues that they've been forced upon them that they're kind of fading out. But in no way do I want to try to suggest that these people are like disenfranchised, only disenfranchised because of the choices that they had made as a Debili. So if you get into the book, you'll see it certainly,
okay.
I respect that very much.
Yeah. So there are Debili in there who are not associated with the.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So they're, in fact, because I would have a problem with a young adult attacking or like fighting someone who is, is a victim of circumstance and is, I think that's very harmful. So I hope that's not in the book.
100. No.
Yeah, I hope those are more sympathetic characters.
Oh, yes. No. In fact, as I said, the keepers have a very strong moral code. So when they see a Debili who's at this stage, they're just very empathetic. They're very understanding. And they say, you know what, they've been through a rough time. And it's not, whether that was through themselves or whether they were manipulated to get to that point. We need to be understanding and kind and do what's necessary for them.
Point. Yeah.
What's that?
What can they do when someone is at that point?
When it's really and I've discussed it in the book, honestly, when it gets to that point, oftentimes there's not much that can be done because there's a buildup of minerals and elements. Both the Debili and the keepers have excess buildup of elements inside them that helps make them their ability to help the earth and to have these strong abilities. And sometimes when you get to that point, there's nothing left within them chemically or health wise. So they just do what they can to kind of ease their pain and make them sort of as calm as possible if they can. But that's not that's few and far between. Most of them are very dangerous and very manipulative and very on top of their game. So
okay. So all right. I just needed clarification because you had
of course
point of that.
Yes, and I'm so sorry if I came across that way. No. It's just sort of like from a human perspective, how might you perceive?
Right.
Anyway, I probably didn't describe it very well, but
okay, that's fair. That's
sorry
fair.
about that.
That's fair. We should go to the excerpt, I guess, because you told.
Okay, sure.
You gave us the elevator pitch, so
yes.
Yeah. Sorry, we had technical difficulties, so this is round 2.
Yes, I'm so sorry. So yeah, absolutely.
These things
okay,
happen.
and this is actually from chapter 1, and it's from the perspective of the antagonist, one of our senior antagonists. So I picked this portion because I wanted to kind of give a sense of what's kind of going through his head. So this particular gentleman, whose name is Rajan, has just woken up in Bangkok, Thailand, in kind of a seedy hotel. And so we'll go from there. Regardless of the poor state of his hands, he dared not touch the disgusting doorknob. The greasy layers that accumulated there over time stirred his imagination, but didn't slow his progress. As vile as the hotel room was, the owners committed no crime other than giving the guests exactly what they paid for, paltry conditions at a trivial price. After a quick, discerning examination, he determined that the knob was composed of a nickel alloy and therefore easily malleable. The process might take might take longer than normal due to his present condition, but that was to be expected. Rajan's hand hovered inches away from the knob. Although he wasn't touching the filthy thing, he was close enough to ferret out its flaws and almost indivisible fractures. His fingers sensed its smooth and hollow consistency. Energy waves pulsed from his fingertips and began heating the nickel alloy and manipulating the compounds from within. The only resulting sound was a muffled crunch and the clatter of loose pieces as both knobs and latch mechanisms compressed and fell to the floor. Placing 2 fingers in the circular door hole, he exited the room. When he approached the lobby, he observed this simple, dingy room, a small, dark respite from the noises outside. A young man stood behind the lobby counter. Although Rajan was fairly quiet, he hadn't purposely been so. He expected the young man to notice his movements. The clerk seemed in a daze, however. Upon closer examination, his eyes were red-rimmed and glassy, probably in some drug-induced haze, knowing this neighborhood. What a terrible shame and waste. Resting on the old Formica desktop were a small cardboard box and a plastic placard broken at one corner. The placard read, "For complaints, call," in the native Thai language, Siamese. No phone number was listed. No doubt, he thought, the clerk couldn't handle anything more than the simple exchange of money and room cards. Written on the box in thick black marker were the words, "For lost and found." He reached the counter and finally had the attention of the young clerk, who merely stared at him, waiting for him to begin the exchange. "I'm checking out now," Rajan said in Siamese. The young clerk shrugged. "You paid last night, so you can go." "I'm afraid there was an incident with my doorknob. I'll leave some money for a replacement." He placed a hand in his pocket to remove some cash. The clerk simply motioned with his hand to the complaint placard on the counter. Rajan smiled wryly. "Really? I can't leave the manager extra cash?" "It's not my business," the young man said wearily, as if these types of damages were common. "I see," he replied. "Regardless, Mid-sentence, he noticed the clerk lift his head and look off to the side. His gaze focused on something in his periphery. The clerk wrinkled his nose and sneezed violently. A sulfuric odor followed by a trail of pungent yellow gas wafted through the room, followed by an even fainter scent of gingerbread. The clerk looked at him in confusion and sneezed again. Rajan smiled warmly and turned to address the vaporous cloud. "My friend, we rarely get to arrange a meeting as perfect as this. Your timing is impeccable. I believe it's a sign we'll finally succeed." While speaking, Rajan ignored the clerk's reaction to the disturbance. Instead, he walked over to the hotel entrance, locked the door, and flipped the plastic window sign to display no vacancy. That accomplished, he went back to the desk and stared into the clerk's face. The young man was having difficulty breathing as the toxic odor and smoke swirled around him. Rajan knew that sulfur and fluoride gas would cause great irritation to the clerk. The clerk's eyes were red and likely stinging. His nose was running and his throat was probably felt raw. Although potential hospitalization was likely, death was not. Rajan didn't yet possess sufficient strength to easily complete the task at hand, but he would manage. He looked at his own hands and examined his filthy nails. "They're not really my hands. Not in this poor state," he considered. "My normal tools are not fully available." The clerk continued to struggle for breath. Despite moving around to the back area of the room in pursuit of fresher air, the noxious cloud seemed to follow his every movement. Rajan wandered behind the front desk and nabbed a forgotten hand towel. "At least it's not dusty or covered in snot," he sneered. "Such a shame, really," he mused, "to see such a young, relatively healthy person destroyed by drug use. I don't think the fates ever planned to be kind to you, young boy. Living in this area, you hardly had a chance." He went up to the young clerk and placed his hands around his shoulders. "Let me help ease your pain, shall I?" The clerk nodded vigorously, eager for relief. "I understand. I really do. It will be over soon." He gently laid the towel around the clerk's windpipe, wrapped his hand around his neck, and squeezed. Despite the clerk's struggles, his strengths were minimal, and the commotion soon stopped. Rajan stood, removed the eyeglasses from his pocket, and placed them into the box to be found and repurposed by some future guest. Upon looking inside, he found a pair of large black gloves. "Why, thank you. I believe these will come in handy." Gently placed some baht in the local currency on the desk. "To pay for the knob, you know," he said to the circling gas, or to no one in particular. "The room is really unusable without it." He glanced at the gloves now in his hands. They were not a perfect fit, but needs must. "Can't show these hands at a 5-star hotel. Let's get to work now, shall we?" He looked at the swirling gas as he walked out, his focus now on getting a cab and heading to the wealthiest part of Sukhumvit, part of Thailand where he is. Afterwards, he needed to see a shopkeeper about a stiletto. So that's one of our main antagonists doing some really evil behavior as he's coming back. So he's one of the ones that the keepers really need to watch out for.
And what is his plans? What is he trying to do?
Well, he's, and I can't get into too much of previous details because there's kind of a big secret in this book that you sort of get hinted at towards the end of it. But he has been trying for years to essentially feel like he needs to manage humanity because he feels like people are not making good decisions about the environment. People are not making decisions about how to take care of the world. And people are generally stupid and a bunch of sheep. And so it's now his turn to take over and sort of manipulate people the way he wants them to go, which is how these Debilis think. They don't care about humanity. They don't care about people. They don't take, like this poor clerk, they don't care about individuals. They're only used to their own purpose. Whereas the keepers are completely the opposite. And one really other important aspect of this book is it's very multinational. So every one of the students that I have are from different countries. And the keeper professors, there's 7 of them, 7 of these younger students and 7 of these older teachers. And they're all from a different continent around the world. And they all speak different languages. Primarily, of course, we have English here, but there's this whole book. It's very much worldly and very much all these characters, these students are learning, okay, we've come from all these different countries. We all have different abilities, but we all have to work together for this common good. And so there's this huge understanding. Once again, one of the tenets of the keepers is we have to be incredibly respectful of everybody's different cultures and backgrounds and histories. And that we are only stronger from an understanding of that and growing together and learning that we can learn from each other. And I think that's such an important aspect, especially for me, of this book, because as I said, I have 4 young adults now who are very concerned about the environment. They're very concerned about sort of what they can do to help humanity, make the world a better place. And they all do that in different ways. And so that was a very important aspect of this book to me is it sort of delves a lot into how can we steward our earth? How can we better take care of this wonderful earth that we live on? And we all individually can do our own parts, right? Whether it's recycling or some aspect of how can we on a daily basis feel like we're doing something to better, whether we can help other people who need us or whether we want to, take care of the environment. We all, as stressed as we might be with the way things can be, we all can on a daily basis just do a tiny little something that makes us feel like we're helping to heal, helping to protect. And so that's what these keepers are ultimately doing. And I bring that up a lot in the book, actually, is the need for respecting others and respecting other people's beliefs, cultures, understandings of their world. Because I feel like a lot of times there's not a lot of that right now in the world. And it's so easy to just disagree with somebody out of hand without being able to listen and respectfully try to understand each other and then maybe come to some sort of other agreement. Like we've learned so much from other people and from other cultures. And I love that. I was really, really fortunate when I was 13 years old to move to London with my family. My dad's job took us over there and it was 3 years of it was incredible. And I didn't want to come home because we got to travel to other countries and learn about different people. And I so loved it. And so that's a very important aspect of this book is just that it's very multinational. And I bring in a lot of food as well. So there's these 2 major chefs in the story who they're married and they, of course, cook all the food at the school. And it's very important for them to feel that they're new keepers who they don't have children of their own. So they really kind of take these kids, all the students in unto themselves. And so it's very important that they kind of get to make meals for the kids that they recognize from home, what makes them comfortable. And if they answer a particular question throughout the novel or say something that one of the professors thinks was like really pivotal or important, or they've like learned something really interesting, they'll get a chance to through this old-fashioned pneumatic tube system, because the school is very much still a very old, ancient school, get to select the meal that they want. And so I'll actually get into it and talk about it, like where the meal is from and what's it made of. Because I also want to encourage people to kind of like maybe try some of these dishes. Like, hey, go to I even say that in the beginning of the book, but maybe go to an ethics grocery store and find some of these ingredients and try something like this. You might really love it. You might really enjoy it. So I try to bring in those the old international cultural aspect that way, to just make it sort of more well-rounded and intriguing in that aspect.
Oh, that's cool. How do you avoid, right? Because you're writing a multinational story and bringing people in from different cultures. Do you have sensitivity readers? How do you avoid harmful stereotypes? Because it's living in the U.S. There's a lot of harmful stereotypes about other places in the world that we are just bombarded with,
yes.
And trying to being able to recognize them and not promote them can be very difficult when you're immersed in it, as we are. So, and I think if you're writing a multicultural book, you have to do extra work to figure out those things because we're not often aware of them because of, culture, news, all the things, especially nowadays, and work extra hard to avoid putting them in there. So I would love to hear how you tackled that. What did you do to try and figure out, okay, what harmful stereotypes have I been bombarded with that I might be holding and not realize, so that I don't put them in this book because they don't have a place in this story? Did you have sensitivity readers? Did you have people from different diverse backgrounds read the book and give you feedback? How can you talk about that process?
Oh, sure. Yes. So when I was researching this book, it was very important to me when I looked into creating each of these characters from different locations and even picking their abilities. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't delving into things that I might have grown up with, basic understandings that are not, of course, not necessarily true, because every person is an individual. So the fact that it takes place at this school, a big part of the book, this first book takes place at this school. It's easier for the characters, their personalities to sort of come out without that potential cultural issues that, inserting themselves. So each of these characters, they all get to know each other in this sort of more safe environment where there's overarching respect and dignity for all the characters there. Because also the keepers are from all around the world. And so there's just, I just tried very hard to make sure that the abilities that I was picking, that everything that I was doing was going to be very respectful of that, because that's so important to me. So hopefully that answers that question, but I tried very hard.
Did you align any of the abilities that they had with cultural, because some cultures have belief systems about various abilities. So I'm just wondering if in your research, if there was ever an alignment between the ability you're looking to give someone and an actual cultural, some kind of cultural history of that ability in that society, where you were like, oh, this is perfect. We've got the culture lines, where I'm just curious if that ever happened.
Yeah, well, actually, in some aspects, yes. So one of my younger keepers to be, her name is Ming, and she's actually from Singapore. So she's very worldly. Her dad's job, she's been all over the world, but she happens to be an emo gem. So in that aspect of, I'm fascinated by Eastern medicine. And what even fascinates me more is how more as we tend to modernize and learn more about good ways to heal the body, we are now more and more understanding how helpful these ancient Eastern medicine techniques can be. And we're able to scientifically prove that, yes, they work, which I think is so cool. So in that aspect, I guess you could say, since Eastern medicine has long embraced alternative ways of healing, I thought it was kind of a naturally good fit that Ming kind of came from that side of the world, because she would have a cultural understanding, like ancient cultural understanding of respect for Western and Eastern medicine and healing properties. And so have an open mind towards the abilities for that to most, her to be enhanced in that way. So I guess that would be an example of how that would be maybe like a good fit.
That's really cool. And how did you choose the name? of these characters from cultures that you may not be familiar with?
Oh, well, their names, actually.
Yes, the character names.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh. I did not bring this up in the book, but I spent weeks and weeks and weeks. I had a special baby naming book, so I started with that. Then when I knew where the person was going to come from, I looked over deeply into typical names for that region. And then I specifically had to choose names that would mean what I thought would be attaching a little bit to their ability, or talking about elements or rocks or minerals or health in those kind of senses, or strength. So each name for every single character is kind of like an Easter egg. They're very targeted. They're picked based on that. So trying to be respectful, trying to pick something that was important to that region and why. So I think my the clinical social work background, my major in psychology in college, sort of really kind of helped to look into that. So I hope people notice that. I hope people notice the character names that I chose, and maybe they can figure out, okay, what symbolically does this name mean, if they're, because each one of them does have, to try to be like culturally sensitive and respectful in a very cool way. Because as I said, we learn so much from each other. I think that's so important, that we try to learn about people other than ourselves. And I think the more culturally enriched we are, the more we learn about people from different places, the more we learn about the world, and the more we just grow and can be helpful to other people.
Yeah, that's very cool. And then in the email, was it your husband that sent it, pitching you to come on?
Oh, yes.
So he had said that you're a storyteller blending ADHD advocacy with vivid YA world. So I wanted you to talk a bit about that as well, because that was really interesting, and we haven't touched on that yet. So
absolutely, I'm so glad you brought that up. So it's in a way, I call it a funny story. It's not necessarily funny, but I've chosen to see it that way. 3 of my 4 children have ADHD inattentive type and various forms of anxiety. And I literally was sitting in the therapist's office getting my last kiddo evaluated when I had this epiphany. And I remembered my mother yelling at me and saying, I'm not going to help you anymore. Oh my gosh, you're frustrating me. Like, you're not listening. You're not paying attention. And I went, oh my gosh, I'm the one who has brought this genetic component into my kids' lives. And so then I had myself evaluated, and sure enough, and it just went, oh my gosh, that answers so many questions about me and my education. And I am a very big advocate for neurodivergence and kids with learning differences, because I think about all the places along my life. And granted, I'm a little bit on the older side, so these kinds of learning differences were not really understood as well when I was growing up. But I think about all the places where it was missed when I was growing up. So for instance, when I came back from England, I grew up in DC, Washington, DC. And at the time where we lived, the schools were not very good. So my parents had to pay for us to go to alternative schools. And in order to get into one of these schools, I had to go have like a WASC-R test, which is essentially an intelligence test for children. And so I think I look back on that and I'm like, wait a minute, I went to that place, which is run by a therapist, and they had to give me these tests, and they didn't notice that maybe there was something going on. And then, once I hit college, I was in a psychology department filled with psychology professors who knew I was in a small liberal arts school. So they kind of saw that I was this intense young student who took her studies very seriously, and nobody caught it either. You'd think, in that atmosphere. So, and then professionally, and what strikes me is, granted, whether you have, let's say, in my case, ADD inattentive type or ADD hyperactive type, usually the hyperactive kids are the ones that you see quicker because they can't sit in their seat and, those telltale signs. Whereas the kind that my my kids and myself have, which is the inattentive type, is a little harder to see because we might be sitting perfectly still, paying attention, seemingly looking at the teacher and be completely checked out mentally, which is what would kind of happen to me. I would just be daydreaming. My son would tell me that he's a software engineer out in Seattle, and he would say, I was in English class thinking of physics problems. Like I would be turning physics, turning shapes in my head 3-dimensionally, completely checked out of English class. So I'm a huge advocate for checking, looking into your kids if they're struggling, if they're having issues, if they're seemingly trying, but they're just not having success. Definitely just look into it because you don't know if they're dealing with something, and it's just amazing how they can be helped and how they can become the best version of themselves if they just have a little assistance, whatever that treatment might be. There's a whole variety of different treatments, but it's so important. And I actually didn't really set out to have a character who was neurodivergent, but as I'm writing the book, one character, my character Tessa, who's favorite of mine, actually does have Tessa discovers throughout the story that she does have ADHD. And I really actually wrote a lot about that in the story because I wanted it to be sort of like an awareness that comes to her. And what I find interesting, what I love about her character is I think I didn't set out to know exactly who, like if there would be one particular character, a young student who was going to become like the hero of the story. Whereas, in Harry Potter, you know exactly who it is from the very beginning.
Right.
I didn't set out to know. I didn't set out in the beginning to know who that might be. But Tessa, I think, potentially might become that. And she does in one specific aspect of the story become the heroine of the moment. And it's actually because of her hyper-focusing ability, which kids or people with ADHD, inattentive or hyperactive type, that's one of their characteristics is we can really bore into something and really focus on something for a good long time. And so she becomes the heroine because of that aspect of her personality, because she was able to find something that nobody else could, because she was able to delve deep inside of it. So anyway, so I decided to have a character in my story.
Oh, that's really neat. I was wondering why you're not really talking so much with the students and more about the Debilis.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yes. I love do you want me to get into specifics about who they are? Oh, I love that.
I mean, they're the heroes. They're the ones that readers are going to connect with, that are going to lead them to read the sequels.
Oh, yeah, I hope so.
Is there a sequel coming? I saw that this is going to be a series.
Yes.
Is there
it's going to be a
timeline?
series. Yes, definitely. The first book is sort of like just an opening of the world and introducing the young characters. In fact, there's a chapter where we go to where each character lives. And that's where we sort of learn about each one and in the place where they live. And as I said before, each of these characters kind of have a sense that something's different about them, that they have an ability that they're not really comfortable sharing with family or friends, because they just somehow know, you know what, I don't know that it would make sense for me to really say something about this, because they're worried that people either think that they're weird or they're strange, or their friends won't like them, or their parents will get upset with them, which I think are very real concerns for especially for young teens. When they feel like they're different than their peers, it can create a lot of anxiety. So they just kind of have a sense of, you know what, I really shouldn't make a big deal out of this, but I know that I can do something that's different. So yes, my various characters. So we can start with Tessa, and Tessa is she is a ingenio. So she loves to be able to take a crystal and sort of either develop like lasers with them, or she just loves the cool properties of crystals. And she's able to kind of see that through so Tessa's very good with her hands. She's like a tactile learner.
How old is Tessa?
Okay, they're all around 17 or 18 years old. So
Okay.
we come into this story where they're seniors in college and they are figuring out their next steps. And so these kids are all hoping that they can further their education and learn what they, specifically what their interests lie. And so they're going through that normal process, but the College of Geoevolution finds you. So they get these letters that come sent to their home that basically says, in fact, I can read that if you'd like.
Yeah. How did
You want me to
how
read
did
the
they
letter?
find
Yeah, let's
them?
start from there. Absolutely. Let's start from there. Well, as I said, we have these guardians around the world, and the guardians
they
know
find
about
them.
the keepers. So that, yes, they can kind of help. So this is the letter that each of the students get. And this one particularly goes to Kame Kona, who grew up in Hawaii. So, dear Kame Kona, after learning about your myriad accomplishments and abilities, we are pleased to offer you admission to the exclusive College of Geoevolution. Our college was founded in 1693 in Williamsburg, Virginia, and is a premier institution for those interested in pursuing their passion for geology and related earth sciences. You were specifically selected to join our elite student body and faculty based on your interests, aptitude, and dedication to earth sustainability. Our unique program is available only to a small group of students around the world who possess the passion, intellect, and imagination to earn a degree from our historic university. We are aware that you did not apply to our school. Our distinct program operates differently than most higher level institutions. We independently select the students whom we believe are most qualified to study here. This unusual program includes free tuition, room and board. For those students who help support their families financially, a stipend will be paid to your parents until you graduate, should your work consistently meet our standards and you demonstrate studious intent. The course of study will take 3 years to complete. The first 2 years will be in Williamsburg, Virginia at the College of Geoevolution, and 1 year will be spent in our Cambridge, England location. Upon your matriculation, you will earn a BS in geology and a master's degree in your specialized field. The College of Geoevolution is its own school, but has deep founding ties to the College of William and Mary and the University of Cambridge, two of the most prestigious and oldest higher learning institutions in the world. Due to this relationship, your diplomas will reflect this notable affiliation. Soon you will receive another letter requesting a home visitation from some of our professors to meet you personally, explain the program in detail to you and your family, and answer any questions. On the accompanying page, you may find our frequently asked questions and contact information. We look forward to introducing our school and ourselves to you. So that's the letter that they receive.
Do any of them, like any of the kids, think, oh, this is a scam? Because there is a lot of that stuff going on, and like if it's too good to be true, it generally is. And
yes.
How do you deal with that?
Definitely. So in fact, I talk about that with Tessa. She gets Tessa. She is she has an older brother who is also in college, and her mother's a nurse and her father is an engineer. And her father had lost his local job several years ago. So now he is a consultant. So he's mainly away. And she is the person that she's probably the closest to her dad. They have this like bench in the basement where they have lots of tinkering, and they'll go down and use their hands and make things or fix things that are broken. And that's their time where she loves her family, of course, but her dad, she really relates to him so well. And so he's away now. And so that's kind of frustrating. And Tessa, through no fault of her own, is kind of not a troublemaker at school, but, she's really interested in her fixing things. And she knows that she's kind of different. And her mom's a nurse and is gone all the time. So they've asked the brother to come home and go to a local school while Tessa finishes school, because they're kind of worried about her. So she is just frustrated that she's misunderstood. She feels like her parents don't respect her or understand her. And so when this invitation comes, she's definitely skeptical, but she's also kind of excited about it. And she has this mentor. Her name is Daya, and Daya runs like one of these Rux crystal gem stores in a mall in Akron, Ohio. And unbeknownst to Tessa, she's a guardian. So she is very well aware of the keepers and is very well enmeshed and recognizes Tessa as a good potential student. And so there's a part in the book where when Tessa learns about her invitation and Di admits that she actually recommended her, and Tessa's kind of upset. She's like, well, how come I don't know that this school exists, and how, why would they want me anyway? Because everyone thinks I'm just annoying. And so Dia has to kind of calm her down and get her to understand like the wonderful benefit of this potential school for her, where she will be fully understood and be able to be the person that she wants to be. So that sort of gives you I wanted to sort of bring that in as a possibility of what is the school life. And then we swing all the way over to Ming. And Ming had lost her mother a long time ago and lives with her dad in this penthouse hotel that's run by her father. So he is like a hotel magnate, and they live in the penthouse of one of the hotels in Singapore. And Ming's maternal grandmother lives with them. And Ming's maternal grandmother is also a guardian. So she knows very well about Ming's abilities and has stewarded Ming throughout her whole life. Ming doesn't have any awareness of this, that her grandmother knows about her abilities, but she's been stewarded as a young kid and sort of had that support from a guardian, which is unusual for these students. And so kind of been protected in a way. Ming's grandmother has and she's, knows about the school, of course. And so it's not as much of a challenge for the dad to let her to go to the school, because the grandmother calms him down and gets him to understand how important it is. So that's Ming. And then we have, we'll swing over to Aiden. Aiden is in England, and sort of in the countryside of England. And he is a pharaoh. So he loves, he has this radar detector, like a little detector machine. And to earn a little extra money, because he's from a large family, he will go and mow lawns for extra money. And he takes his little detector with him, which is actually broken. It doesn't work at all. But he takes it with him because he loves to be able to bring up stuff from the earth. And he has this real affinity and respect for, let's say, blacksmiths from hundreds of years ago who would create things that people needed. And then over time, it might have been farm machinery or whatever it might be. It might have been forgotten and buried in the ground, or even ancient Roman stuff, because over there in that part of the country, they have some, whether it's Roman coins or artifacts, they have all these things that have been buried in the ground over years just from life. And so he will pull those up, obviously with his hands and his ability, but he uses the detector to make sure nobody sees what he's doing. And he always is kind of amazed, because while he's doing this, he's thinking usually about how he wants to go fishing with his dad. And invariably what he creates right there in situ are these little fish models. And he brings them home and he gives them to his mom. And he's like, oh, here, look what I found. And he doesn't realize his mom's like, oh my gosh, these ancient Romans are making these fish, and this is so cool that you're finding these, and we need to give these to a museum. And he's thinking, oh my God, this is not good, because I don't want my parents to learn what it is that I'm able to do. So he's ready to go. He's like, it's time for me to leave, because I'm going to give myself away if I'm not careful. And there's Kamikona, who grew up in Hawaii, and he is really interested in volcanoes. So that's, he's grown up around them his whole life. His dad had been in the military and fell in love with a woman in Hawaii when he was there, attached there. And so he loves volcanoes. He has a sense of when there's going to be a volcanic eruption well before anybody else does. Because it senses the vibration and the chemical concentrations of the lava. And so he is really hoping that he can help figure out a better way to detect volcanic eruptions sooner than we know about them now. And so that's one of the things that the keepers do is, once again, they don't protect the earth, but they will steward humanity in the right direction. So that's very important to him. And then we have Elise, and Elise is from Paris, France, and she's actually deaf, and she has a sensitivity to the earth and the vibrations of the earth. And she's really, really frustrated and ready to get out because she has this mom who used to be from a very well-heeled family, like a notable, noble family from generations ago that has since long lost its money. And the mom happened to marry a very well-known international American lawyer. And this lawyer is totally fine with letting Elisa's mother steward these girls to try to get them back up into that society. So they're constantly pushing finishing schools on her and making her go do debutante stuff. And she has absolutely no interest in that. And her mom is very frustrated that she won't get a cochlear implant. And Elise doesn't want anything to do with that because she knows she has the sensations. She can feel the sensations of the earth. She can know when earthquakes are going to be happening, and she loves to take off her shoes and just feel the earth underneath her. And she is very afraid that if she does something to fix her hearing, that she's going to lose that. And so she's fighting it. She's like, I'm perfectly fine the way I am. I love who I am. I don't need anything to fix me. And so she's fighting with her mom who wants to perfect her. And she's like, I don't want anything to do with that. I want you just to accept who I am. Love me for who I am. I'm perfectly fine. There's nothing broken about me. In fact, this ability that she has enhanced all of her sensations. And so she wants to be able to do what she can to help others to fix and work on the problems with, earthquake detection and making sure that people can get out sooner and faster and so forth. So she's also frustrated and ready to get out because there's just constant fighting with her mom. Her dad just sort of lets the mom do what she wants and loves his daughter, but it's not going to get in the way of mom's desires. So let's see. Then we have Demian, and Demian actually lives in Riga, Latvia, and he loves working in his uncle's jewelry store. And he's able to just sense, he'll pick up the rings and the necklaces and so forth, and he's able to sense if there's some sort of residual, like ancient evil in there. Like, has somebody who is a criminal held these or stolen them from somebody or hurt somebody to get these, to be able to sell them? And he can sense that there is sort of like negative energy in them. And within some of these gems and minerals around the world, one of the things the keepers do is they will pull them out of society. Because if a gem or a mineral, or let's say a piece of jewelry, has been held by evil people or evil Debili who have plans to harm others with it, it soaks up that negative energy and stays inside there, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And the more it gets passed around, either through the black market or through the regular society, it's going to wind up harming regular people, who I call commoners in the book, because they have no sense of the danger. They don't understand that these pieces that they're holding will sort of eke that negative energy into them. And it can really be very, very harmful. So there are certain keepers around the world whose job is to go through and collect these items and bring them to the school, where they have a very special vault where they're all kept. And so there's things there like a piece of jewelry that Vlad the Impaler used to have. Vlad the Impaler from Romania, where we have the thought of that may be where the Dracula lore kind of came from, was from his reign of terror. And so they have like a piece of jewelry from him that they were able to sneak away and get away. So he has a sense of these things and wants to be able to help remove them from society, be able to help people and make sure people are, having things that are healthy and happy for them. So those are some of the characters right there. I'm trying to think if I've missed any. I think that's most of them. And then all of the keepers have the keeper instructors have similar abilities. And they have these, distinct relationships amongst these cells, and they kind of squabble, and, they all love each other ultimately, but, they react with one another. And are working with these students and trying to, and it's sort of the first book is to kind of help the students realize that they do have these special abilities, that yes, you do know that there's something that's unique and different about you, and you have an ultimate, like this gift, and your job is to help the earth, and we're going to help you figure out how to do that. And while that's happening, then we have these Debili that are coming in and trying to cause havoc and trying to cause problems. So the keeper teachers are working on that while they're also protecting their younger students and trying to get them up to speed and teach them. And through that, I also bring in some like cool history and science, which I think is a lot of fun because I just think it's always fun to learn, which is why I have, yeah. So those are my younger characters. And so I go into their families and what they really want out of life and what their understanding of each other and learning from all these other students that they're interacting with now.
Every year they bring in a new batch of students.
Generally, although I discuss it from the very beginning of the book, I think it's chapter 2, the keepers realized that they didn't have any students in the previous year. Their school was kind of like at a hiatus. There was no students there. And they don't know why that's the case. They have, for many centuries, they have their keeper, because they'll have some keepers that go and get PhDs, for instance, and they go learn specific things. And so they've had them, there's research and there's been dissertations. Keeper Reese, who's my Australian keeper, who's a resogem, so he's ferreting out the black market. He always jokes that he likes to go and check those out from the school library because they help him fall asleep. So he doesn't really have a respect for the intellectual aspects of what the school has learned over the years, but that they actually do try to figure out, okay, so why is it that we only get certain students at some years, and why do we not get any students at all? And they just think, you know what, we try to understand it, but we ultimately don't necessarily have a sense of that because, they can't pinpoint what it might be. And that's part of the mystery of how you become a keeper and how you don't, and why are you born to do that? Why do you happen to have this ability? And they can't automatically say, okay, what is it that gives us that? Is it Mother Nature? Is it something else? Like, they don't know. But it does exist. So that's like one of the quandaries that the mysteries that they always try to understand.
Yeah. So that's something that might unfold in the sequel. So
yes.
Keepers of the Rock, the Debilis Rising. So this just came out.
Yes, in March. Yep, just came out. So this is book 1. And then I'm beginning to write book 2. The audiobook is also available. And the wonderful Marion Hussey did an amazing job. And I had to pick somebody that was very good with voicing accents from different countries. And she's very, very good at that. So she did a lovely job. I was really pleased with how that turned out.
That's cool. So next year, maybe for book 2, or?
That's what I'm hoping. Yes, I definitely, I'm getting down to it. I can show you. So ultimately, this one took me 15 years to write. So from soup to nuts, because I have to do a lot of research for each one of the books, like I told you about each name. So all the stuff that I do, it's a ton of research. And so the world is built here. And then it shouldn't be nearly as bad to write the next one of the sequel because I know where we're headed. Yeah. For sure. But it's like, this is the beginning of the entrance into the world. And then next book, we're blowing it wide open. So we're going to get into the nitty gritty.
Do you have like a preset number of books you want to write for the series, or it's just open-ended? Because some authors do know, okay, I'm only going to do X books in this. And then there are other authors who are like, whatever the characters feel like doing. If we have something new to do, we will do it.
I'm thinking maybe 3, but potentially 4. As some of your other writers have said that I've listened to, that you're and you've said as well, that your characters surprise you. I mean, you might be determined to be like, okay, this character is going to do this, and then they say, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going this direction, and you think, oh, okay, yeah, I can see that happening, and let's figure that out. Let's see where that's kind of going to lead us. And so that definitely is something that I've found in writing this book, which was so interesting. So yeah, we'll see kind of where it happens, but I learned from them as much as they are learning from me, which I think is a lot of fun.
Oh, it is. It definitely is. Is there anything else you want to say about the Keepers of the Rock, the Debilis Rising, before we close?
Oh, let's see. Well, I hope you really enjoy it. It was a lot of fun to write, and I want to say it's like a love letter to the earth. It's a love letter to our world, and to whatever it is that we can do on our own, that makes us feel like we're doing our little bit to keep our world turning and keep it green and keep it healthy. It's a love letter with all the different abilities of ultimately keeping our earth as healthy as possible, and having a fun, rip-roaring time learning about it. So, and bringing up a lot of historic, like I said, for instance, with the emo gems, I think it's absolutely fascinating that we have these rocks and mineral stores that we can go into now in various cities, and that people have attributed healing properties and things like that. But that's happened for thousands of years, that people have felt that way culturally in different countries. And sometimes, I even bring this up in the book, sometimes countries, cultures have felt this similar beliefs about a rock or a semi-precious stone, and they're completely on different parts of the earth. And they felt this way from thousands of years ago. So there wasn't a lot of traveling during that time. So I think it's just so interesting culturally. It's like cultural anthropology, right? It's like how this came to be and how people still believe this now. And I love the history of that. So I delve into that, the history and certain aspects of different cultures believing in certain properties of things, which I think is just a lot of fun and so interesting.
That's really cool. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
Oh, you're welcome. So that's all we've got for today. Hope you'll go out and read Keepers of the Rock, The Debilis Rising by E.K. Wise. I'm indie fantasy author Melinda Kucsera, and we'll be back with another book and another fantasy author soon. Thank you.